Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of On Oshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hentz. Very happy to be joined tonight by someone who I've worked closely with in dog training. Carrie Tetzloff is here, and she's got a lot of credentials behind her name. And so we're going to be talking with Carrie tonight about dog and cat behavior, dog and cat training issues with dogs and cats, and a special treat for me, and I think for her, we have Bella here tonight. Bella will be on camera very soon. She is my dog, one of my 3 dogs, and Carrie has worked with her, so she's here making her TV debut, and I think she's happy to be here. So anyway, welcome. Thanks for being here, and we appreciate it so much. So first off, you've got all these credentials behind your name. What do they all mean? And maybe they can put it up on the screen so that we can see what all the credentials are, because I've never seen so many credentials.
Oh, that's very sweet. You know, dog training is an unregulated field, and I'm really proud to be able to say that I've had continuing education and I'm a certified dog trainer. So for folks who are unaware, maybe thinking about hiring a dog trainer, what should you look for? And maybe a couple of my certifications. The Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers, that's the CPDTKA letters after my name.
Okay.
So that means that I am a certified professional dog trainer, knowledge assessed. Okay. I'm a graduate of Karen Pryor Academy's professional dog training program. For those who are maybe not familiar with Karen Pryor, she was a marine mammal trainer. Oh, wow. And she is the, I don't want to say inventor of clicker training, but she proliferated clicker training into the dog training community, taking marker signals like whistles from marine mammal training and converting it into something that we as dog trainers could use. So the clickers that are available widely in pet stores that you'll see dog trainers using, that was something that Karen Pryor was really responsible for making it mainstream. So that professional dog training program I'm a graduate of, that's the KPACTP letters after my name, and I'm also Fear-Free certified. So I have graduated from the Fear-Free Pets certification program. Yeah, Fear-Free.
Okay. Well, what does that mean?
So the Fear-Free movement, that's Dr. Marty Becker's movement, is an initiative to take psychological intimidation, fear, anxiety, and stress out of the care of our companion animals. It's a movement that's really centered on veterinary care, but trainers are also really embracing this fear-free methodology and trying to take physical pain, discomfort, fear, anxiety, and stress out of our training techniques.
Sure.
So that fear-free certification means that I am really committed to using those force-free, fear-free techniques in my training.
Sure. And since we're talking about that, Carrie, you've worked with Bella. Whoops, I just lost my microphone. Bear with us here. There we go. At least this time I noticed it had fallen off. One time I was like 10 minutes before I even, and they're pointing, and I'm like, I don't know what they're pointing about.
That was a good catch. You got it right away.
I heard it unclick, and I grabbed it. You've worked with Bella, who's here tonight, and our other 2 dogs, with, some... I guess I'll call it dog aggression in the household, because they have been having some fights. I think I've got things under control now, but one of the things that I had bought, and I showed it to you when I bought it, because I was so proud of it, and it was a collar that stopped dogs from barking, and it would, give them a little, you could set it up so it would beep, or it would buzz a little bit, or it would give a little shock anytime the dog barked. And you, with your wisdom, and I hadn't thought about it until you told me about it, you said that's not a good thing and I should send it back. And so talk to us a little about why that is not a good thing.
Sure. So shock collar training is something that's been mainstream in our country for quite a long time, right?
But not even shocking. I mean, just the buzzing and the...
Vibration collars, other types of aversive-based collars. They've been mainstream for a long time, and a lot of people grew up training dogs that way, right? I don't fault guardians for wanting to find tools that are going to help them live in harmony with their dog. The challenge and the problem that's introduced with collars that use some type of aversive stimulus is that we don't have control over the negative associations that our dogs can form. So if they're barking, and that barking is coming from a place of perhaps fear, anxiety, and stress, or territoriality, we're protecting our home, that we see somebody outside, and then that barking behavior, while they're seeing that stimulus in the environment, maybe a person walking by, is paired with a negative consequence with their collar, it can help them form increasingly negative associations with that situation, and can lead to escalation of aggressive behavior as one of several types of fallout that can happen.
So in public, if they'd see a person, they may have a very negative feeling toward people, because in the home, when they'd see people, this thing would go off.
It's certainly possible. Dogs are smart. They're always learning. Everything we do with an animal is training, right? Whether we're being intentional about it or not, and associations are always being formed. So yeah, if a dog starts anticipating, oh, this is the kind of situation where I've received a collar correction in the past, it can put them in that negative mindset, or that anticipating type of stimulus that causes them fear, anxiety, or stress.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the best way to avoid that, but I guess first, before we get into that, because I think we're going to be using Bella for probably some of that.
Yeah.
You know, how many years, because you and I first met, and I didn't realize it at first until you mentioned it, plus you had a mask on when you came to my home for the first time, but you and I first met when you were employed at the Oshkosh Area Humane Society.
That's right.
And was I on the board of directors at that time?
Gosh, I started, let's see, I worked at the Humane Society. I believe I started working there in 2010. So I know you've been a wonderful supporter of the Oshkosh Area Humane Society for a really long time, and I've been familiar with your involvement in the rescue world for the duration of that time, but I can't remember if that overlaps with your board.
Yeah, so you would
presence.
have started after you guys moved into the facility that they're in right now.
That's correct.
Okay. So yeah, I would have not been on the board any longer. I was actually on the board when we got the $1 million that helped us to be able to get out of the place that they were in.
That's amazing.
And into the beautiful shelter that this city now has.
Oh, it's a gorgeous facility.
It
Absolutely.
is.
People who have a negative idea of what an animal shelter looks like really need to visit the Oshkosh Area Humane Society and see that gorgeous facility.
And not all shelters are good shelters. You know, they're in the South. You've got kill shelters all over the place, which is why rescue volunteering is so important to me, because we're saving lives, you know, getting them out of those kill shelters. So how many years do you have then, Carrie, training dogs?
Yeah, so I got my first certification in 2014.
Okay.
In 2012, I launched the shelter's first positive reinforcement-based behavior modification program. I launched that in partnership with Haws and Waukesha. So Dr. Claudine McAuliffe came up and mentored our staff. And that was really a turning point in my career working with animals, getting to see the way that positive reinforcement could be leveraged to save lives and to address problem behaviors, and to see ways that undesirable behaviors can be dealt with in a force-free way. Punishment didn't need to be a part of the equation. Dr. Claudine was really a big part in opening my eyes to that. So I was completely bitten by the behavior bug in 2012. Did a bunch of continuing education, got certified by 2014, and then throughout my career at the Humane Society continued to work in various capacities helping with training. So I became first I was our admissions manager, and then I became our behavior department manager. So very, very fun to be able to help not only the animals in the shelter that need training, to help adopters, but also to do surrender prevention consulting. And that was a big part of my job in that role, is to try to keep animals out of the shelter that have problem behaviors.
So do you still work with the shelter then, even though you're now in business for yourself?
From time to time, there is one surrender prevention case I'm helping with them with right now. And I have partnerships with quite a few different rescues and shelters. Nina Animal Shelter, I'm there very frequently helping their awesome staff. Various different rescue groups I help too.
Great. You know, what should someone be looking for when they're looking for a trainer or a behaviorist? Because I'll just share one story with you. And this was with one of the groups that I used to be affiliated with. And we had a woman who held herself out as a trainer, and yet she had zero education. She took the dogs that our rescue was getting in if they needed training, she would train them in her home with her own dogs and with some other dogs that she may be training for the rescue at the same time. But she didn't have one single hour of actual training to know how to be a trainer. And, you know, I've probably got as much experience in dealing with animals over the years as she does, but I would never think to hold myself out as a trainer. And she was actually billing the rescue for all these hours that she was supposedly training. And I just found a real problem with that. But in Wisconsin, you don't need to have any kind of certification or degree or anything like that. You can just hang out a shingle, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, there is no oversight. There's no license that I have to call myself a dog trainer. I've gone out on my own and pursued certifications, and my colleagues in the training space that I work closely with have done the same. But there certainly are a lot of people that don't have formal education in the science of how animals learn, the psychology of training. And that's critically important, on top of understanding the ethology of these species that you work with, their natural behaviors, ways to communicate their health. A lot of knowledge goes into being able to offer training and consulting services.
So if someone is looking for a trainer, and I always recommend that if someone's getting a dog, whether it's a puppy or an adult dog, I think that a certain amount of training is important. You know, a dog may come knowing a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, like in the case of an animal surrender. You know, the part of the pandemic, you know, a lot of people have been adopting dogs during the pandemic.
Yes, yes.
But the other side of it is that sadly some people have had to give up their pets during the pandemic because they can't afford them. So a dog may go into a rescue or a shelter already having some pretty good basic training. But do you think that everyone who gets a dog should get at least some amount of training?
Yes, I do. My view of training, if you zoom out a little bit and think about it, animals are always learning from consequences, and they're always learning by association. So whether you're intentionally trying to train your dog or not, they're learning, and they are being trained. And to be intentional about what you're trying to teach your dog is really important. And that's where a dog trainer or behavior consultant can really help you. They can take a look at your routines, your way of being in the world with your dog, the consequences that you're either intentionally or unintentionally providing for your dog's behavior, and they can help you leverage the science of psychology to have an excellent relationship with your dog built on trust. They can help you make the behaviors you'd like to see your dog do more often, happen more often, and they can help you prevent your dog from practicing behaviors that could be problematic or challenging for a relationship. So everybody's a dog, you know, is training their dog, right? But to bring in a professional, a dog trainer with some credentials and some education could be hugely beneficial to every new adopter, dog owner.
So in the state, I know you said buyer beware, you know, to me in some of your notes. And, you know, maybe just give a cautionary tale to someone about what they should be looking for, and should they be asking for references?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a wonderful question. You know, recently in our community, we had a controversy. I don't want to get into a lot of the specifics, but a very well-known trainer had some video footage go viral of some very dangerous and just really inhumane methods being used on a dog. And this has really raised the conversation in the dog training community and really companion animal owners. What makes somebody a dog trainer? How can I know if these are the methods that would be used? This isn't what I was expecting to be used, or were those methods used on my dog? Those are valid questions. I think transparency is incredibly important in training. And I encourage all of my clients to ask specific questions of me before they work with me. So some things that I would not be offended at all if a client asked me, and I would encourage everybody to ask, would be what kind of methods do you use? And please be very specific. What is going to happen to my dog when they get something right? And what's going to happen to my dog when they make a mistake? I would be very transparent and comfortable with sharing what my methods are with a client, and I would really celebrate the fact that they care so much about their animal. They want to know exactly what's going to happen in training. if training is not going to happen in front of you, that's even more important. The line of work that I do, my clients are always present, so there's really no secrets to what I do.
Yeah.
My client is always there watching, and I'm coaching them and teaching them how to use the techniques. But if you're going to hand over the leash and responsibility for your dog to a person and they're going to be training behind closed doors, it's even more imperative that you be told ahead of time exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, because you have no idea what's going to happen. And I'm not sure, but I think that Cesar Millan may train that way. He also goes out to people's homes, as we've seen on TV, and train them. But he has that, what does he call it, the psychology center or whatever. And I think he takes dogs in then. But, you know, I actually, you know, sometimes I'm up late at night. More often than not, I'm up late at night. And I saw one of these judge shows come on. And someone had, it was a problem between two people over a dog. And this guy had, he travels a lot, but he wanted his dog trained. And so he just, as you said, handed the leash over to this trainer. And you know, you hear about that, where people just, they send their dog away for training, and then when they come back, they're all trained. But my view, and I think you'll probably agree with me on this, dog training, in my opinion, is as much about training the dog as it is about training the person, because you have to find a way to work together.
That's
right?
Exactly right. Absolutely. You know, I would say my job as a trainer and consultant is possibly even more so about training the person, because they're going to be the trainer when I'm not there. You know, my job is to make sure that the guardian knows exactly what tools, techniques, training methods to use so that they can be reinforcing those desirable behaviors all the many hours of the day and days of the week that I'm not present in the home, right?
Yeah.
And even if you're doing board and train, you know, I'll be honest, Cheryl, there's very few board and trains in our state that I recommend. There are a few really great ones. And there are a couple folks in our community. Maggie from Practical Obedience in Green Bay does a puppy day school. That's something that I would highly endorse. All the methods are positive, and the guardians are given the ability to be coached and mentored on, okay, we did a lot of the training without you present, but now we're going to transfer those skills back over to you. I know Lindsey Bernier from Ideal Dog does a little bit of day training as well in her programming, and it would work the same way. You know, it's not, the trainer isn't going to magically change what's happening in the home and the routines, right? All of these techniques need to be transferred back over so the dog can be effective in the work that they're doing at home.
Yeah, I know of a like a hunting dog training place, and I think that you give them your dog for a week or two, but that's training specifically for hunting purposes, which is a different kind of training than your basic obedience training, you know, your safety training, things like leave it and things like that. And we're going to demonstrate some of that with Bella. But it does concern me that there's no regulation over dog trainers.
I would welcome regulation. I truly would, because I work with guardians who have been in the unfortunate position of having spent a lot of their hard-earned money on training that has sometimes even made their dog's behavior more erratic or unsafe or unpredictable. And that really hurts my heart, to have somebody that has spent this precious financial resources investing in something that has actually created a bigger problem. I know I'm not alone in that. There are other positive trainers like myself that on a regular basis are encountering dogs that have had some pretty significant fallout and negative consequences of being trained in a way that's just not humane.
Yeah. Well, and here, you said it was a controversy in the community, and I never even heard of it. So
the video is very shocking, and I'm glad you didn't see it. It's
okay.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon for people to ask for references, is it? Or
you know, I will say it is very rare for my clients to ask me for references. I would be thrilled to provide upon request. Other credentialed trainers that I associate with would feel the same. It makes my heart feel full to know that somebody cares so much about their dog. But I would absolutely say asking for references, reading reviews, being really specific about asking what methods are being used, what your background is. Just having grown up with dogs is not a credential in my mind to make you a dog trainer. I've lived with electricity in my home my whole life, and I'm not an electrician, right? So
there you go.
So you know, I don't have me try to fix your car. I've been driving my whole adult life. I'm certainly not a mechanic. So
that's a really good point. But you know, this is how silly some of our regulations in the state are, and I'm going to rail on this for a moment because it irritates me that folks like you don't have to be licensed in any way. You know, I can go somewhere and get a $5 haircut. Well, I don't know if I could get it for $5 anymore, but you know, I could go and get a simple haircut for maybe $10, $12, and that person has to be licensed.
That's right.
But you can turn over a dog or a cat to someone who may or may not know what they're doing, who may or may not use humane methods, and that the state sees as okay.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something that needs to change. There is some discussion amongst some of the certifying organizations, and the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers is actively engaging in some discussion right now about how to push the agenda of encouraging this to become a regulated field. But as of right now, you're absolutely correct. There's no license needed.
There's so many things that don't need regulation, and it's just really a shame. So, well, I think that this would be probably a good place to, you know, get into some of the little things that, oh, and I didn't ask for your references because when you said that you knew me from the shelter, it clicked. But also my vet had recommended you.
I love that.
And so I knew
those.
that you know, and I trust my vet implicitly, and so I knew I didn't have to ask for any references. And then when we met, it all came together. But I ask for references for almost anything.
Yeah.
You know, in life, you have to these days.
I think that's wise. Veterinarians are one of my #1 referral sources. There are more people that reach out to me for help because their veterinarian sent them than there are people who find me on Google, and I think that's pretty amazing. I always keep track of how do people hear from me, and it's other certified trainers and veterinarians are my #2, and word of mouth from my existing clients. Those are the primary ways that people hear about me.
All right. Well, you can use me as a reference.
Thank you, Cheryl,
for the work that you do. So we talked about this next question. So let's just move right into some of the basics that dogs should know. I'm leaving cats out of that because cats, I think, probably need a different kind of training than dogs do, of course. But, you know, we'll see how Bella does. So I don't know if you want to go over and show us what we need to do and how we need to do it.
Absolutely. I'll come collect Bella here. So
she's a beautiful dog.
Oh,
but
she's
anyone
gorgeous.
who sees her. Oh, you need to step over this way.
Yes,
I think,
I'm just gonna make sure my. Oh, thank you. And I'm a little caught here on my mic.
Yeah.
Just gonna make sure I've got my leash and my mic not crossing paths here. We don't want to get tangled. Nice job. So, Bella, I'm gonna toss a treat that way so I can make sure she's not in my mic.
So
She's
people.
a beautiful Dalmatian. Can they
She
see us
is, and
okay?
nobody else can have her. She's mine.
Back up a little bit here. All right, just making sure. There we go. Perfect. Good. So Bella here, beautiful Dalmatian. She's super social, eager to work. She's very food motivated. I'm happy to have her as my demo partner. I want to show everyone how a clicker works. This is not something absolutely essential in dog training, but for me, it's one of my favorite tools. Hi, girlfriend. That is where the treats are. Just a little plastic noise maker.
If we could maybe get the camera to go down just a little bit so...
Nice. Yeah, and honestly, watching Bella and my hands might be more interesting than being able to see me talk. So a clicker is a little plastic noisemaker. You can see it here in my hand. I'm going to be using that to communicate with Bella what behaviors I want her to repeat. So the sound of that click is going to mark when she has correctly done a behavior, and it's always going to be followed up with a little piece of food. In everyday life, we might not always be using food as reinforcers. We might be using toys and praise and petting, access to things a dog wants. But food is something that Bella is very motivated by.
Look at, she's just sitting there staring.
Most dogs are quite excited to work for food. So that's what we'll be using today. So if I didn't have Bella's focus, this is actually a wonderful treat to have a dog who's so excited to be looking at a person. Sometimes I work with guardians whose dogs are paying attention to everything but them. So if I had a dog in front of me that was not paying attention to me, what I might do is I might click when the dog looks up and makes eye contact with me, just to capture that decision to look in my direction. Okay. Oh, I love that wagging tail. I'm tossing food away so that I can get Bella to look at something else, and when her gaze returns back to me, I'm clicking and feeding. Now, eye contact is a really helpful skill. Bella, nice job. Eye contact is a really, really helpful skill to have. If a dog may become distracted, to have a cue that you can use to get that dog to come look at you again. So if Bella was not looking at me, toss a little treat over there. Bella. I could use her name to come back and look at me. Some dogs will use watch. Bella.
Now, I have a question.
Yes.
So how do we know that she's looking back at you because she's hearing the clicker, or because, okay, she's eaten that treat, now she wants another one?
Yeah, for sure. So the click is happening as the behavior happens, not before. We're not using the click as an attention getter. So it's not like Jurassic Park where we point a click at the dinosaurs, right? Like a remote control. Bella. So it's marking the instant the behavior happens. What I want to happen is the cue needs to come first when the animal is not currently doing the behavior. We're going to mark the correct response with the sound of the click, and we're always going to follow that click up with something that the dog values. Bella. So cue first, then behavior, which is clicked, and then reinforcer afterwards. Let's work on some other skills, and I think that'll become more clear. Bella. Nice. See her wander away a little bit there, and then in response to hearing her name,
She's looking for more food on the floor.
Good girl. All right, let's work on a couple other skills. One thing I love to teach dogs is a behavior called a hand target. Where a dog's nose goes, the rest of their body has to follow. Bella. Nice job looking my way. Thank you. It's actually nice to have some distractions happening off camera, and I can use her name cue. So if I want Bella to move to a specific place, I could teach her a behavior called a hand target. Her job is to touch my palm of my hand with her nose. I'm clicking that to let her know, yeah, that's it. That's what I wanted you to do.
Oh, she didn't want to. She didn't see any food there.
She didn't. But we're going to go ahead and strengthen that behavior here, and we're going to practice through using clicker training to encourage her to place her palm on my nose more often. Nice. That was a good boop on that one.
Yeah, it sure was. And I actually dog sit for a dog who does that. She's been trained. They came up from Milwaukee, and I think that's where she got trained. But she touches your hand with her nose.
Love it.
You know, so
There's
yeah, this is something that I think is becoming more popular, probably.
Girl. Yeah, it is. And one of the reasons I like to teach this, there's a lot of different ways you can use this behavior. When most people meet a dog, what do? Put their hand out, right? So I like to teach dogs that this is a positive thing. Not all dogs feel positively about having a hand come near them. So to teach them that it's a good thing when a hand comes out, and you're going to, girlfriend, you're going to be able to earn a treat for putting your nose there. It helps build a positive association. Hi, girlfriend. You can also move a dog from one place to another. Bella, boop, boop. Nice job. Using your hand target. So if you wanted to guide a dog from one place to another, you could use that target to get them to follow. Hopefully you can kind of see on the camera there. So we're moving that hand. Good. Nice job. Very good. So I use hand targets to get dogs on and off of furniture, in and out of the car. Bella. Just to get them to move where I need them to go, on and off the scale at the vet clinic. Other techniques you can use to shape behavior. So if Bella didn't already, I know she already knows a sit, but we're going to show folks at home that might be following along with their dog how you could teach a dog to do that behavior. So you could use a technique called luring. You can still use your clicker here, and I'll demonstrate that too. But first, what I want my dog to be able to do is follow a piece of food. Good, nice, wherever it's going to lead them. That might seem simple, but some dogs are a little nervous about following a piece of food for whatever their reasons are. So I'm going to just go ahead and encourage her to follow the food. I'm sort of magneting that food to her nose, and she can follow wherever I'm going to move it. Okay, so I'm going to kind of draw a line here in front of her nose. Give her that food.
So the click carry comes at what point?
So there I'm clicking her for following the piece of food. Now if I was trying to teach a specific behavior, like let's work on teaching a sit with a lure, what I would do is I would wait until that butt hits the ground, I'm luring her head up, and then I'm clicking the instant her butt hits the ground to give her an idea that that's the behavior that I want her to do.
Okay.
So if I'm luring up, so encouraging her rear end to hit the ground, I'm going to click when that butt hits and then feed. Okay?
So when they do the behavior you want, you click, and then you reinforce with a little piece of food.
You got it. So once the dog's repeating the behavior over and over again, here I'll show you how easy this is with the lure to get that butt down. Now I'm ready to name this something, and I'll talk to you about how we get rid of this clicker, because we don't need the clicker forever. We're just using it as a teaching tool. What I would do is I would start saying my cue, sit, with my lure, still feeding. I'm dropping treats here just to get Bella standing up again so I can get her ready for another sit. Sit. Nice. Okay. Now I would want to start fading this food out because I don't want to have a piece of food in front of Bella's nose for the rest of her life to get her to sit, right? So what we would do here is we would start holding the food a little higher. Sit. Nice job. Very good job, girlfriend. Oh. I'm going to lure a little higher over her head now. Sit. Good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to have food in my hand at all. Sit. Good job. Food's just going to come from my pocket instead. I'm going to start fading this hand gesture out. Sit. Nice job. Now at this point, I have two different options. I can use a visual cue, which is this hand gesture, or sit. We could use the verbal cue. Okay, so we've got those two different options. What I can also do is I can start fading my clicker out because I have a dog who's reliably doing something. So sit. Good. Used both cues there. I'll show you one at a time. Yes, good job. So just that visual cue. She's putting her butt on the ground. And then here I'm just going to use the word sit. Good job, girlfriend.
See, and I will say this in full disclosure. I mean, Bella, you know, she's going to be 10 in a few weeks. And as we're taping this on the 20th of January, so she'll be turning 10 in a few weeks. And I've taught her from puppyhood on how to sit, but I've not used
a visual
hand signal. She just sort of knows it. So she's already learned something different tonight. She's associating that hand with sitting.
Absolutely, and you can do hand signals for any behavior. Dogs are really visual learners with each other. They do a lot of their communicating visually, right? So incorporating hand signals into your training is really useful. I would say really any signal your dog can perceive, whether it's a sound, whether it's a hand signal, whether it's a smell, it can become a cue as long as it's been paired specifically with the reinforcement history of the behavior. So because she's seen that hand gesture right before being reinforced for a sit, she's learning. Yes, good job. That's an indicator for her that that behavior could be reinforced there.
Yeah, and we should point out to people that it's not like she's getting whole biscuits here.
Right.
You know, you're taking, you know, kibble or whatever, and you're breaking little pieces off.
You got it.
We don't want a dog getting humongous just in the training process.
There's some plain kibble in here, and I'm also using tiny, tiny pieces of freeze-dried beef liver so that we've got the ability to do some repetitions for sure. Good job. So if we were working on wanting to teach a down, I could still use luring. I could find her nose with a piece of food and start guiding her down to the floor. Nice job. I can bring the clicker out there too. Toss a piece of food here. Now she's 10. I don't want her to be doing tons and tons and tons of downs here. But I'm going to do a few of them just to kind of show. Good girl. Nice job. What that process of luring your dog down.
See, she knows how to shake, and so that's what she's trying to do.
Good. Little confusion there, and I'm just going to clarify that for her with the clicks. She's only going to be clicked when her elbows hit the ground. Okay. So she's going to start to learn, see that? There was no paw there.
Yep, there sure wasn't.
That clarity of that click is going to give that information to the dog about what behaviors are going to be reinforced. Nice. And then from here we could start adding a cue if we wanted to. Sweet Bella, I'm just going to get that leash from between your legs here. Thank you, girlfriend. So if I wanted to start naming this, I could start a hand signal or I could start naming. So I could kind of have my finger down. We're going to lure her down. Down. Nice job. Okay. Down. Good. And then from here I could start fading. If I wanted to make a hand signal, I could sort of point to the ground.
Oh, wow.
Good. And then eventually that could become my visual cue if I wanted. Look at that.
Wow.
Okay. And then I could eventually, there's no food in my hand. Good. And the food can come from somewhere else, right? So that way I can ask for a behavior without needing to be using food as a bribe to get the dog to do it. They'll be paid somehow, sometimes with food, sometimes with other real life rewards. But we want to get that food out of that picture for them and have that empty hand eventually. It's okay to use your lures when you're first getting started training a new behavior. But you want to fade those out as quickly as you can. Good job, girlfriend.
You know, one thing that I think is important for a lot, well, for all dog owners to know really, is having their dog leave it. Because so many times you'll be walking a dog, and dogs just seem to naturally find things that people have thrown on the ground. And it isn't always necessarily a good thing for them to be grabbing. And sometimes they see it well before you see it. The other part of leave it is, you know, and this happened to me the other night, I dropped a pill on the floor. And, you know, the dogs all sort of converged, and I said, leave it. And they all just left it. She wasn't part of that. The other two were. But, you know, it's important, I think, for dogs to know the command, leave it.
I agree. That's a super important life
it.
skill.
And they're two different things, right?
You got it. For me, leave it means swing your head up and away from that item. Don't put your mouth in it. Don't put your mouth on it or grab it. Drop it means open your jaws. Whatever's in your mouth, let it fall to the floor. So that's my criteria when I'm clicking and training those behaviors. And that's what I'm thinking about. If I have a dog on their way to an item that they're going to grab, I'll use my leave it cue. If a dog already has something in their mouth that I need to get back, that's where I'm using drop it. Okay. I could demo a little bit with leave it.
Yes, would you please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So when I start training a dog, I can't remember if I've done any leave it work with her, so I'm going to start easy.
You haven't.
Okay, cool. So this is a new skill.
It is.
For her. So I have some kibble in my hand here, and my guess is that that's a little bit less valuable to Bella than a piece of freeze-dried beef liver. That's just my guess. Every dog's different. I've met dogs who love a bland biscuit and they turn up their nose at cheese, and that surprises me. But every dog's different. They're the expert on what that they would like to eat. So I've got my kibble here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just naturally capture. If she looks in the direction of that and her head swings back over, I'm going to be clicking that choice. I'm not naming this anything yet because I'm not really sure she knows it. But she's naturally offering me behaviors, and as I see that head swing, I'm going to go ahead and mark that. Okay, so marking that choice. Once I make a $20 bet, she's about to do it again, I'll start naming it. So I'm going to call this leave it. Leave it. Good. So this is where we start building that association of, okay, this thing is called leave it. If I swing my head away from it, it's called leave it. Leave it. Good. Clever girl. Leave it. That was a really fast one. So that speed of that behavior can also give us information about what Bella's understanding here.
So what if there was something on the floor, Carrie? You know, let's say you were walking her.
Let's get to that.
And, oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So how do we start getting this out of our hand and into the environment where it's going to be more lifelike? I might start, maybe I'll grab a chair here. Is that okay with you, Bella, if I slide a chair a little bit? Okay, so I'm going to start bringing my kibble down to dog level. Okay. I'm going to try to not let her get it. Leave it. Oh, good job. I saw a little bit of her eyebrows turn, and I decided to click that. Leave it. Good job.
Oh, so she was going to go for that.
I saw her look at it.
Yeah, I could just tell she was going to go for it.
So that's where I'm timing my cue. When she looks at that kibble, she's so smart. I'm just going to let her think about it for a second. I might play with it a little bit to prompt the behavior. Leave it. Yeah, very nice. Leave it. Good job. Okay, so she's very aware that that kibble's there. If she wants to get up, she can go get it. Leave it. Nice. I'm trying to set this up in a way that it's reasonable to expect she can get it correct. Leave it. Ah.
Wow, that was impressive.
Yeah.
That was good. Good girl, Bella.
Leave it. Yes. Bella's so smart. And then from here, this might be rushing it a little bit, so we'll see how it goes. But from here, I would start considering putting this on the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and set this here, a little bit far away from her. She sees it's there. And if she glances, I'm going to go ahead and move it around a little. Leave it. Nice. Leave it. Nice job. Leave it. Good girl. So this is a wonderful thing that she's playing the don't look at the kibble game, because it shows some understanding on her part that she's getting treated for having her head up here and not on the ground.
Yeah, because she knows it's right there on
She sure
the floor.
does. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and reinforce her for giving me this wonderful eye contact and not looking at the kibble that is very close to her feet. Good girl. Yeah. Okay.
And you didn't have to use the clicker that time either.
I didn't. And I can leave it. Oh, I set her up for failure on that one. So that gave me information as her trainer. Does something bad have to happen to Bella because she made a mistake? No. In fact, she didn't make a mistake. She did a calculation in her head. What's the easiest pathway to reinforcement, right? So me as a trainer, I look at something like that and think, okay, how can I set this up differently on the next repetition so that my dog can be successful? Leave it. Nice job. So we just go back a step, and then we're going to reshape the behavioral response from there. I don't have to punish Bella. Nothing bad has to happen to her. I just realize as the trainer, leave it. It's my job to make sure Bella can be successful and can learn the things that I want her to learn. Okay, good girl. Leave it. Nice job. Is that all making sense?
It is. Yep.
Yeah, good. We start in kindergarten. We graduate elementary school, we get to middle school, and then high school diploma. So we want to make sure we're working our dogs through realistic training exercises that are meeting them where they're at, so that they can be successful and supported. Mm-hmm. We'll take the scaffolding away, we'll take the training wheels off the bike when the dog's ready for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good girl. Excellent.
And you know, this just goes to show to people that, you know, she's a senior dog. Mm-hmm. She's almost 10. Mm-hmm. And yet here she is still learning new things, because I have not been able to teach her leave it. You know, it's difficult when you're trying to train a dog and you've got two other dogs in the household. You know, you have to take one to a room by themselves. Well, then the other two are barking and carrying on because they want to know what's going on there. Mm-hmm. And you know, one hears the other two barking or clawing at the door. It's a lot of bedlam in many respects.
It's a real juggling act, isn't it, living in a multi-animal household?
Yeah.
It's easy to feel outnumbered.
So I've not always been successful in teaching them to leave it or to drop it. I'm kind of successful, but not entirely. So I'm impressed with what I'm seeing here, because she's definitely getting it.
She's a smart girl. Absolutely. All dogs can learn. I love what you said about she's a senior dog. Dogs can learn new things at any age. So just because a dog's later in life doesn't mean that they don't still need training. That mental stimulation that comes from training, this has been very interactive for Bella to be able to get out tonight, come to a TV studio, get to work on some training. This is a lot of mental stimulation
and
for her.
And meeting a bunch of new people.
She's been quiet. She has been attentive. She's been on her best behavior. Lots of things to reinforce here tonight. And really, people at home, if you can use a little bit of training, even if you're working on tricks, it might not seem important. The time you're spending with your dog, teaching them new skills, it's going to be really meaningful to them. It's going to build that bond and relationship that you have with them, and it's going to give them a little enrichment in their life, which they so need.
And, you know, mental stimulation is as important as exercise, really. We've got some actual games at home that we can play with the dogs. And, you know, there's like there's like plastic bones, and you can put treats under some of them. And they have to move the bones to get to the treats.
Yeah, that's right.
That's just one of the games that we have. But, you know, they're using their nose to smell, and they're having to think about things. And mental stimulation, you know, a dog can get so tired out just from mental stimulation. She's going to sleep like nobody's business tonight.
I think she will. You know, we used to see that at the shelter all the time. We would have a dog out for a jog, and they would be out of their kennel for an hour, and they would come back and still have a lot of energy. But sometimes removing them from their kennel and doing 10 minutes of training, we would return them back and they'd be asleep on their cot. So giving your dog a brain workout really can tire them out in a good way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Good job, girlfriend.
Well, I know we've got about 15 minutes
Yeah.
left. Do you still want to work with her on some things?
I think this was a logical place to give her a break because she's been training for a little bit.
All right.
And we can finish up getting to the rest of our interview, and I'll return Bella back to, she's got a special little enrichment toy to go enjoy now. So
yes.
I'm going to return her back to go enjoy that here. Nice job, Bella.
Yeah, she's still looking at you.
She is delightful. She's a really awesome dog.
I just love her so much, and you know, it's. I think that you have helped us in our household dealing with some of the, you know, the dog fights and so forth. They are not completely eliminated, but it takes time, and I do think that you know, it's going to work out one way or another. But I think that you've been very instrumental in helping us. So with our time, gosh, running so short, I want to get to some of these other questions. I want to talk a little bit about, and it's not a political issue, it can be controversial, I suppose. You know, in my rescue work, I interview people who are adopting dogs, and I look at their homes and I look at their yards. And, you know, I don't work with any rescues that say, if you don't have a fence, you can't adopt a dog. I just don't have any of those kind of rescues in my, you know, my little repertoire of groups that I work with. But I know that there are some rescues out there who say, especially with certain breeds of dogs, if you don't have a fence, you cannot adopt a dog from us. And then that leads you to another problem, because there are a lot of homeowners associations these days and little pocket neighborhoods that say you cannot have an above ground fence. So what some people are doing to, you know, resolve that issue is they're getting underground or electric fences. And I'm not going to call it an invisible fence, because invisible fence is in fact a brand name. But you can't see the fence, it's underground. I know how I feel about those, but from a professional standpoint, are they decent? Are they good? Do they help? What would be some of the things that you'd want to be on guard against with an underground fence?
Yeah, so I'll tell you right out of the gate, my strong bias is it's a tool I would not use for my own dog. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, and I'd like to outline that. I completely understand the benefit of being able to exercise your dog in your yard. I understand the motivation of guardians to want to give their animal some freedom of movement, physical exercise. These are all things that are good for dogs, right? So I'm definitely on the same page with folks that we really want to make sure that our dogs have the ability to make full use of their yard and get some good exercise. My worries about these fences, I've worked with a number of clients this year whose dogs have displayed some pretty anxious behavior after the installation of underground fencing. Dogs who have phobias about traveling too close to a border, dogs who are engaging in stereotypical behaviors like running in circles in their own yard. I had 2 cases this year that were very sad that featured that kind of behavior in the yard. Dogs who are really having a hard time making the distinguishing where can I walk and when can I cross the driveway and when can I not. For them, it's not so clear as I have the collar on, so I can't do it right now, and the collar's off, so I can do it right now. That can be hard for guardians too, to remember, like, oh, that's why my dog doesn't want to recall to me. It's because normally they would receive a shock from their collar if they did so. Some of the other challenges with underground fencing, it does not keep other dogs out, okay?
Or people, for that matter.
That's right. So I've worked a number of cases where I've had a dog in their own yard and an off-leash dog comes into the yard and attacks them. I've had a couple people this year whose dogs have fear of other dogs after a dog attack. And it's really important for guardians to remember, if you're using underground fencing, that barrier only works for the dog wearing the collar, right? And
well,
it
right.
also,
or I'm sorry to interrupt, but you know, if you live sort of in a more outskirts of town kind of area, you've got wolves, you've got coyotes. Those things can come in your yard also.
You're right. And when I worked at the shelter, it was almost like a running dark joke about, we would have a lot of dogs that would come in wearing their underground fence collar, and they would come in as strays. So obviously, like, how did they get there? They ran through their underground fencing. And what I think about is a dog who has run through the fencing and has received that collar correction once is not going to be very likely to want to run back into their own yard and receive that collar correction a second time on the way back in. So you may have a dog who's been very, very motivated to leave their yard, but that motivation to come back just isn't there. Now they're running at large, and we could have a dog hit by a car or get into a lot of trouble. So for all those reasons, I really recommend actual fencing, actual fencing to contain a dog. There's pros and cons to different types of fencing. Some dogs do better if they can see through the fence. Some dogs do better if they cannot see through the fence. So that's something that guardians could work with a trainer to talk about what kind of fencing might be best for my dog, which type of fencing may they be less reactive with.
Sure.
There's also boundary training, recall training. There's all kinds of training that you can do to help your dog have positive associations in their own backyard, skip some of those potential fallouts, anxious behavior developing, and teach your dog to recall. Additionally, if your dog's still in that stage of boundary training learning, you could be using a long line, a check line, a recall line, something like that, to make sure that you have a reliable containment solution on your dog.
Right. And you've got it secured, so they can't get out of the yard.
Absolutely.
And it gives them good exercise too.
Right.
But yeah, I guess if it were me, I wouldn't be buying a home in an area where I couldn't have a fence. We have a fence. I like the fence. I think the dogs like the fence. But I understand the cost of lumber is astronomical these days. I talked with one woman who was putting in a fence. She lived in a condo and she was putting in a wooden fence, and she had I think it was a more oversized yard than what most of us in the city of Oshkosh probably have, because I think most of us in the city have a 50 by 100 or 50 by 50 lot. Hers was a little bit bigger than that, but she was going to put fencing, wooden fencing, a privacy fence 6 foot high around the whole thing, and she was looking at about $6,000.
Yeah, no,
it's expensive.
Completely
but
understand
there are other ways
that.
that you can do it.
You got it. There's definitely other workarounds. It's really about trying to arrive at the decision of what's in the best interest of the dog, what's in the best interest of the guardian, coming up with an exercise program that's going to be safe, that's going to be reliable, and is going to skip over some of the negative side effects that can come from using aversive tools.
Sure. Let's talk about cats a little bit. I know we're kind of skipping through some of the dog stuff. But,
that's okay.
Cat behavior counseling and consulting, and the positive impact that working with a trainer can have on things like litter box issues, tension between cats or cats and dogs in the household, cats and rabbits in the household. So many people have rabbits these days.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a dog with a rabbit because I have rabbits coming into my yard, and my dogs will kill the rabbits usually. They're pretty good at catching them.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about cats.
Sure. Yeah, I do cat behavior consulting as well. So I probably work with 1 cat guardian for every 10 dog guardians that I work with, but it's still, even though it's a small percentage of what I do, it's something that I really love. I love working with cat guardians. The 2 most common things that I work with, you actually mentioned as examples: litter box aversion, elimination out of the litter box. That's probably my #1 thing that I consult with folks on. Went back in my shelter days, I used to work with foster homes to do litter box testing with cats, and we would also work with guardians who adopted a cat that had litter box issues, trying to help them work through it. Cheryl, the Humane Society, does cat behavior counseling there.
Cheryl Rosenthal, yeah.
Oh, she's an amazing. She's really an inspiration, and she does a beautiful job helping guardians with that work. So I'm doing similar work with litter box cases through my business, and I would say probably the #2 reason people reach out to me is dynamics issues between a cat and other animals in their household, particularly dogs. I've worked a lot of cases where there's friction between the cat and the dog, but also between cats. Maybe we've added a new cat to the household and there's some dynamics issues. So my job is to come in and coach, and really, I want all of the animals in the house to have a good quality of life. So we want Guardian to have a good quality of life, and we want all the animals to be happy too, and behavior counseling can help us arrive at that.
Now, why do you use the word guardian? rather than owner?
So I typically don't use the word owner. I don't have a problem with other people using it, but to me the relationship between animals and people is so much different than owner and property, right?
Yeah, there is that stigma. Under the law, they are still considered property.
They are. Absolutely.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah. So for me, it's caregiver, guardian, and some of my clients prefer different terms.
Sure.
Some clients like to be called a pet parent. You know, it really just depends on what they like. But guardian is my standard.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I learned through, I think it was something with Cheryl and Joni at the shelter, you know, was that if you have more than one cat, you should have one litter box for every cat plus one.
That's right.
So if you have 2 cats, you should actually have 3 litter boxes.
Absolutely. Cheryl and Joni taught you well.
Yes, they did. and I learned quickly, too. I don't have cats, but that's something that I always pass along to people when they talk to me about stuff. Now, if someone just has 1 cat, Carrie, should they have 2 litter boxes?
Yes.
They should, really?
They should. The reason for that is some cats have a strong preference to want to urinate in one location and defecate in another. So it's kind of funny. I've seen this with a lot of my foster cats that I've had over the years. There may end up being a designated poop box. And really, I can't fault a cat. They have to walk in there and do their business, and they're clean creatures. If they would like to designate a separate area for defecation and then urinate in the other box, let's support them in that. Let's help our cat feel good about their box. So absolutely, I recommend 2 boxes for a single cat, and I'd recommend scooping twice daily, again, because cats are really clean creatures. We want to create a litter box scenario that's going to set them up for success that they want to use, so that there is no reason in the first place to seek elsewhere.
Okay. And one other thing that I learned in my time on the shelter's board, you know, since I've lived with a cat a couple different times in my life, but I have never been a cat guardian or a cat parent. But yet, she lost one of her little toys. It's way over here now. I was wondering what I was seeing out of the corner of my eye. You know, when people declaw a cat, it can start having problems using its litter box, right?
That's right.
And see, I guess, I don't know, maybe it was because I didn't have that much experience with cats, maybe it was because I had never really given that much thought, but I thought of declawing as just like removing a dew claw on a dog. And a dew claw is the one that's up higher on the leg. I've never figured out what the purpose of a dew claw is, but I sort of, you know, equated that to declawing a cat. So not true. I mean, declawing a cat is actually, if we were cats, we would be taking it off to the first knuckle.
That's right.
And that's a horrific thing.
It's an amputation. It affects
it
affects the way the cat walks. So the way they distribute their weight, a cat that has their claws is going to be using their last digit of their toe for balance, and it helps everything about the way that they move. So when we remove that first knuckle, it actually changes the way that a cat's foot rests on the ground, which can lead to arthritis, increased pain, especially as they age.
Right.
We could see very noticeable physical differences, not just in the feet of declawed cats in the shelter environment, but watching how they moved. These cats were significantly more likely to display arthritis symptoms.
I just got the wrap-up signal, so thank you so much for being here, Carrie. It's been informational for me as well, and Bella's just staring at that toy. She'll get it in a moment here, but thanks again. You know, if you want to get in touch with Carrie about any questions or whatever, her information's been up on the screen throughout the show. So thank you, thanks to the crew, and as always, thanks to you. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.